Welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast, where we are building a community of people who are in the midst of midlife, sharing our stories and learning from each other along the way. Each week, I'll have a guest join me to discuss a topic that impacts our lives and touches on some aspect of midlife. We'll discuss relationships, transitions, health and well-being, parenting, careers, and more. My goal is to encourage and support you and help you thrive as you navigate this adventure of midlife. Join me here each week for the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast. My guest this week is Brooke Auchincloss. Brooke is a retired photographer and art director and is now a raku artist. She's lived all over the world, including South Africa and London, and currently resides on Maui with her youngest daughter, who is 13. I met Brooke through an online support community of mothers with neurodivergent children called Mothers Together. The week this episode airs, I'll be meeting Brooke and the rest of our group for the first time in person, which I am so incredibly excited about. In this episode, Brooke and I talk about parenting, Brooke's career as a photographer, and her adventures all over the world. We also talk about her experience living in Maui during the fires. Brooke has gone on so many adventures in midlife, and it's fascinating. I hope you enjoy this episode with my friend, Brooke Auchincloss. Welcome to the Marvelous Middle Age Podcast, Brooke Auchincloss. I am so excited for you to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I tell you what, we were talking quite a bit before we started recording, and we could probably just sit here and talk all day, honestly.
Right?
I don't think we would have a problem.
We should have just hit record.
I know. Just hit record and let's just go. Let's just do it. I love it. Well, before we get into our conversation today, could you just introduce yourself, a little bit about who you are, about your family, and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Brooke Auchincloss, and I am 60 years old. I think I barely qualify for this podcast. My daughter thinks I was born in the Middle Ages, so I'm closer to that, I think.
Were you born in the 1900s?
Right. She said that. So I am a retired photographer, and I'm now a raku artist, and I live in Maui with my younger of two daughters, who is 13, and my eldest is 23, and she lives in California at the moment.
Awesome. Well, yes, you are in Hawaii, so we are joining together here via video, which is pretty cool. Technology is awesome when it works, right? We were having that conversation. When it works, it's great. So again, I am so glad that you're here. I wanted to talk a little bit about how we met, because it's just, we were again talking before we recorded about how it was kind of lightning in a bottle, how our group met and how we are getting to know each other. And we both are parents of children who are neurodivergent. And we are part of a group called Mothers Together, or that's how we met, is through Mothers Together. We were matched by Megan Champion, who runs Mothers Together in a group. There's 7 of us total, but there's 5 or 6 of us that are a little more active in our group. We were kind of randomly put together into a group of moms who are parenting neurodivergent children that are about the same age, teens, preteens, and teens, which is a whole adventure in and of itself. That's probably a whole teenager parenting is a whole nother podcast episode. But we were talking that neither one of us were like, sure, how is this going to work? We're being matched randomly with these other women who just so happen to have a neurodivergent child. How are we going to mesh? How are we going to gel together? And I don't know about you, but I felt like almost from day one, we all just kind of clicked. We use Marco Polo. It's a video messaging app, and we all got on and just started doing these videos to each other. And it's been since May 1st. Yeah. And it's been incredible. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really isolating before we found each other. It's really hard because our experience as the parents of neurodivergent kids is so totally different.
Yeah, it's
What's
like
that expression?
polarized compared
It's a
to
polar.
parenting
That's
a
right. It's
neurotypical
a
child. It's
completely
completely 180 degrees different. Yeah.
completely different experience. And so it is really isolating. And I felt like I'm the only one, and there's no one who's having this particular experience of parenting. And I feel like Megan matched us, but really the universe did, because
Hmm.
it was such an amazing experience. We all clicked so beautifully and so quickly, and it's been such an incredible support to find other people who have similar issues and ideas and thoughts. And honestly, that group saved my life over the last year. It's been so life-changing. In fact, I wrote to Megan Champion, I wrote, "You changed my life last year." And she put those little crying emojis. It was so sweet, or those little
Oh,
blown my mind emojis. It
oh,
was really sweet. But we do owe her a huge gift of gratitude. I mean, it was just life-changing to meet you all, and it's been such a
oh,
wonderful, wonderful experience. I would wish that for everyone.
same, same. I completely agree. I think maybe I knew one, maybe other person,
Mm.
who was parenting a neurodivergent child, in my community, my town, whatever you want to say. And I just, I didn't know them well enough to share some of the things that I felt like I needed to share. And
Yeah.
so meeting all of you and being able to be so vulnerable and really sharing my, I don't know, my vulnerabilities, you know.
Yeah, and your perspective has been so helpful to me. Like, it's fun. It's
Oh,
one thing when you
same.
meet someone in a school or a playground or something like that. It's a totally different experience. And that format of recording videos on Marco Polo, it's such a private space that you get into, that we know each other, although we've never met. We know each other, or as one of our friends, Lisa, said, we've never seen each other's legs, but somehow we're much closer than you are to to a lot of people you meet every day, because we've had this
Yep,
kind of intimate space to share our thoughts and feelings and common experiences.
absolutely. I feel like we are able to be vulnerable with each other, and there's no judgment. There's no
Zero.
judgment in
Yeah.
what we're sharing. There's no judgment in, if we're talking and one of our kids is yelling in the background, or one of our kids has done something, or I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like we're, I don't know, we can be completely vulnerable together. And yet I, I know that you all won't judge me. If I were to come on and say, "Oh,
Totally.
this happened and guess what? And I didn't react well," you would all be so supportive and
Yep.
so I don't know, just so generous to me with your feedback, with your comments, with your support. And I mean, you can't put a price tag on that. Like, that is just so invaluable to me as a parent, as a mother.
Yeah.
And we don't just talk about our kids the whole time. I mean, we do talk a lot about our kids, but
No.
we've shared what is going on with each other's, um, you know, uh, family lives. And I feel like I know all of you so incredibly well. And it's just been amazing. It's awesome.
Totally, but I also feel like it's this brain tank. Like, honestly, this collective group of us knows more about so many of the issues that I face as the mom of a neurodivergent child than any expert I've ever spoken to, because we've all, lived it on the front line. We're all dealing with that stuff every single day. And if any issue you have, there's somebody in this group who has had that same issue and has some brilliant solution or insight about it, or even just, like you said, just a supportive voice, which has been vital.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, yeah, again, I can't even describe what it's like. If someone is listening that's parenting a neurodivergent child and they want to know more, I will put a link in the show notes to Megan's Instagram account, as well as the Mothers Together website. It's just learn more about it. She does some events called open houses where you can explore more about it, what she's doing. She offers them several times a year, I think now. And And I think we were one of the final groups that kind of get on. She was doing it monthly, and then I think she suspended that and
Oh.
went to more of a every few months kind of thing. So I think we were pretty fortunate that we got in there right at the
Yeah, we were just fortunate on every level because
yeah,
that group of that was really exceptional. I would just wish that for everyone, and I hope that everyone would be able to find that through her because that it's been life-changing.
same. I'm with you 110% on that. We were talking also a little bit about just parenting in general, but you are 60 years old,
Right.
which is awesome. And you're parenting a teenager right now.
Yes.
And for anybody out there who's parenting a teenager, whether they are neurodivergent or neurotypical, it does not matter. There are unique challenges. And this, obviously, your oldest daughter is in her 20s now. So it's not your first rodeo here, but
That's right.
you're parenting a teenager right now. And so, tell me a little bit about the decision to become a mom a little bit later in life and, how that's impacted you. What kind of led to that decision and what it's been like.
Well, I don't know that it was so much a decision. Like, I don't ever remember a point where I sat down and I was like, I should have another child. It
Right.
kind of happened by default. I was living in South Africa at the time, and I decided that I wanted to adopt. I guess it was a decision then. I decided that I wanted to adopt. I had been involved in a project working in a home for abused and abandoned kids, and I realized how many kids in South Africa are living in really dire and desperate situations.
Mm,
And I have a birth child. My older child is a birth child, and I had decided that I didn't want her to be alone
right.
someday if something should happen to me. And kind of knew these social workers through working on this project. And they called me one day and they said, "We think we found your daughter." And I was like, what?
Oh
And
my
24 hours later, I had a second daughter.
oh
And
my gosh, it
there are
happened that
good,
quick?
it was quick.
Oh, I
So,
didn't know that.
there are good and bad things about being a mom in your 60s. I'm really glad that I was not a mom in my 20s because
Mhm.
I was not sane enough in those times, and I was going through too many changes of my own. And no matter how
Sure.
much 20-year-olds think they're all grown up and they know all the answers, they certainly do not. Not that you do at 60, but you have more of an idea of who you are, I think. Not that that is helps necessarily with everything, all the bumps and challenges, but yeah, I at least have more capability now than I did when I was younger.
Mhm. Love that. I love that. Yeah, it's I was a little bit older when I had my son as well, but I was
Uh,
in my early 30s, which is very different. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think there's something too about having a child a little bit later. You've got a lot of great life experience. You know what's important. You really know where you want to focus with this child and all of that. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it really wasn't a decision. You just felt like called to this. And then there she was. And,
there she was.
again, I mean, that's such a cool story to me because, yeah, I really feel like that is just, like, whatever universe or spirit or whatever kind of moving and saying, this child is meant to be your
Definitely.
child. You
And
were meant to be her mother.
she's so clearly my kid.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
she's so much like me. It's unbelievable. I never would have imagined that
I
that would
love
be
it.
the case, but she really
I love it.
is. Yeah.
That is fabulous. I absolutely love it. That's great. So in terms of your life, again, you have alluded to different things that you have done over the course of your life. I think you have led a really interesting life. For myself, I've only lived in two states, here in the Midwest, and then I lived in Florida for a little while. You have lived all over the world.
I
And
have. I was
friends and
lucky.
people that you know all over the world. Tell me a little bit about kind of, what that journey is like. Your professional career, you have been a photographer all over
Right.
the world. You have done your pottery, um, your art. Just tell me a little bit about this journey of your life. And I feel like in some things, like you're just getting started. Like you recently shared the other day that you're like doing some pottery lessons. You're teaching. Like that is
Yeah, I just
so cool.
started.
And
Yeah.
getting rave reviews already, it sounds like. So
Well, one, yeah.
yeah, well, hey, you know what? It takes one happy student.
One
And
student, one review. There we
I
go.
love it. I absolutely love it. Can you share with us just a little bit about your career and your travels and what you've done? It's just fascinating to me.
Sure. Well, I spent a lot of time in France growing up because my grandmother lived in France, and I think that woke me up to other cultures. And then I grew up in upstate New York, but I went to Syracuse University, and someone bet me I couldn't get into the college's overseas program in London. So I applied kind of as a joke. And when I got in, I thought, ah, all right, I'll go. And I went to England and I ended up being there for 16 years. And when I was still in school, I was offered the job of assistant art director at Harper's Magazine. So I went to work at Harper's and ended
Oh
up
my
using
God.
working at Vogue and Harper's and Tatler and Esquire and all of the magazines, which was just
Oh my
really
goodness.
exciting. And then I switched careers a little bit and I went to work at Getty Images. And then I was transferred to Paris to be the head of their photography. I was director of photography of the Paris office. So I lived there for quite a few years. And then I moved to New York and I had just had a baby and I thought, what do I want to do? And I was sitting in a mom's group with my daughter. My daughter was, I guess, about 6 months old. And I was
Mhm.
in a mom's group in New York. And somebody said, does anybody know a baby photographer? And I watched my hand go up and go down and go up and go down and go
What?
back up again. And I said, I'll try it. I was like, I'll do it. And so I started photographing babies, like first my friends' babies, and then I had a little business called Baby Photo New York, where I would go to the home generally of people who were extremely wealthy with my little backpack, and I would do these super, super arty pictures of babies.
Oh my
And some of
gosh.
my clients one client actually, I did a very, very tight, kind of grainy black and white, beautiful, beautiful photograph of her son's face. And she blew it up 8 feet square on the wall of his room. It was so
Oh my
cool. It was
goodness.
really cool.
That is amazing.
It's amazing. And then I was living in New York and it wasn't really my place in the world. And I had a friend from London who was in town and he said, I've just moved to Cape Town. And I said, you can do that? You can just move to Cape Town? And he said, yeah. So I went home and bought tickets to go down and check it out. That night, I bought tickets. We went down a few months later. My husband and our young daughter and I flew down to Cape Town and fell completely in love and moved down there.
Oh,
And I think it was someone said to me you should have an agent, and I approached an agent and I showed him some of my baby photographs from New York that I'd done for private clients, and they sent me to see a magazine, and I was booked solid for about the next 10 years. And then Johnson and Johnson saw some of my work and actually flew down to Cape Town to shoot with me and which was amazing. And I ended up shooting for them for many years, which was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I also did campaigns, all kinds of campaigns for Pfizer and for tire companies, for everybody, basically. And then I shot fashion for Marie Claire for a bit, which was wonderful.
oh,
It was a
wow.
great experience. I was able to do all kinds of wonderful things. And then I ended up moving briefly to San Francisco and then to Maui. And I started doing ceramics about 3 years ago, just before COVID, I guess.
Mhm.
And it was the perfect thing just before COVID because I had my own studio in my home. So I'm sorry you have to stay home and work in your studio. Oh, darn. So
Darn.
I think I always wanted to be an artist and I was always looking for a medium. I've explored various different mediums from photography and painting and drawing. I did non-retinal art for a while,
What
which
is
is
non-retinal art?
non-retinal art is art you cannot see with your eyes. It was acoustic in nature, in that I would describe installation pieces that I designed, which were not bound by reality or the constrictions of construction.
Oh,
And
what?
I had a channel which was where people could hear them, which was called Immaculate Conceptualization.
Oh my gosh. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah. I don't
I,
know if anyone else does it. I've seen a few pieces, but
mhm,
so I did that for a while and then I stumbled on ceramics. And then from ceramics, I found raku, which is a Japanese form of ceramics from the 15th century,
mm.
where the pots are removed from the kiln at about 2000 degrees when they're glowing red hot, and you plunge them into sawdust and they burst into flames, and they create these beautiful metallic, crackle, gorgeous textures that I just love.
Oh,
So
and I've
that's what I
seen
do now.
pictures of, I'm not, seen a piece of yours in real life, but you've shared photos and I will put a link to your website in the show notes.
Okay,
Your
great.
pieces are stunning. They are
Thank you.
gorgeous.
Thank you
You
so
have
much.
shared several different pieces that you've had either in shows or are just have on your website available. And I mean, they're beautiful. You shared one recently. It was almost at least the picture, it looked kind of a bright, beautiful, almost rusty orange red. I can't even
Orange.
describe the color. It was almost like it was fire, but it
It
was.
is. It's like a glowing orange. And that piece is in a show at the moment at the Hui Noao, which is an art center on Maui.
Mhm.
And it has horsehair, which is that when the pot is about 1000 degrees, you touch it with horsehair and it makes these incredible permanent burns on the posts.
Oh,
And after the fires in Maui, of course, that flaming orange with these permanent burns across it was
yeah.
just something I felt called to make.
It's absolutely gorgeous. Like I said, I've
Thank
only
you.
seen pictures, but it's absolutely stunning. Yeah. And until I met you, I hadn't heard of raku. So I was really, when you were describing that, I was just going to say, can you explain what raku is? But you did a beautiful job of doing that. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
doing that. You are continuing with your art on Maui. And I know I mentioned you really recently had started doing some lessons and things like that. You mentioned being on, Maui. You lived there through the fires, the recent fires
Right.
that were there. And um, would you mind sharing a little bit about? I know you had a great experience with World Kitchen. I know we hadn't really talking about this, but I remember when you were going through that, you were generous to come on our mother's group even just to give us updates because of course we were wondering how you were doing and we were hearing about the fires on Maui. And
Yeah.
I have a friend that lives on Maui, and how is she? And you were able to come on periodically and share. um can you share a little bit about that time to whatever level you're comfortable with sharing
Sure.
about that and your work with World Kitchen that you did? Because I remember you doing that and having a lot of really positive things to say about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate in that I don't live on the side of the island that was
Mhm.
directly affected by the fires, but of course, all of
Right.
us on Maui were affected by the
Yeah.
fires.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, and just the week after the fire, I volunteered for World Central Kitchen. World Central Kitchen is an incredible, incredible organization. It's run by Chef Jose Andres, and their mission is to go wherever there are disasters, natural disasters, wars, you name it. So they're in Gaza, they're in all of
Mhm.
the places where people are in most desperate need, and they either provide food, or they help build structures to enable local food producers to distribute food to those mostly in need. And
Mm.
it was the most rewarding experience. I would just urge anyone who can to volunteer for them. I met several people in the course of working for them who, whenever they have vacation time, they pay for their own flights to go to wherever it is, Haiti, Mexico, Louisiana, Gaza Strip, wherever, to volunteer for World Central Kitchen, which I was just amazed by. and it's an organization that is largely staffed by volunteers and by donation, and it is just an incredible organization.
That is amazing. I remember you sharing just some of the things you were doing for them, and how well, organized they were and had everything kind of ready to go, and you were able to kind of step in, and I think it even kind of taken on a little bit of a leadership role in some of the things that you were doing, and really getting into that. And so I wanted you to talk about that a little bit, because I think what I really wanted us to talk about, and we kind of talked about it a little before, we probably should have just started recording when we started
Right?
talking, because we talked about a lot of really cool things. Um, Occupational hazard, I guess, being a podcaster.
Yeah.
But you, throughout your life, you obviously have led this just incredible life of adventures and travel and really neat experiences. But some of these things, and you talked about becoming a photographer in your 40s, working with World Kitchen at 60, you've and starting your raku. I think sometimes as we age, we think, well, you know, I've done all I'm gonna do, and that's
It's true.
that, and I'll just sit here and wait for whatever. And you have really turned that on its head and done some things, becoming a parent later in life, all these career pursuits and things, and art later in life. Talk about that a little bit, because I think a lot of people feel like, well, I'm 40 or 50 or 60 or 70, and it's too late for me to start something new or try something new. And you've really just kind of done the opposite of that. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think all of us at any age have that feeling of being stuck, that feeling of it being over for me. Like, you know, there's that, it's a mindset, really. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily related to age, where you feel like I'm in a rut, like there's nothing left for me. I'll just settle with this, what I have. And then there's other days where you get that glimmer of something,
Mm.
and you think, okay, it ain't over,
Right.
I still
Yeah.
got it.
Love that.
I can still do this, I can still make a difference to somebody. I can still connect to somebody. I
Mhm.
can, and moving to Maui has been an education for me too, because a lot of the good friends I've made here are in their 80s,
Mm.
and they are kick-ass, intelligent, insightful, interesting, creative people, and we are, as a culture, very ageist.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks life ends at 50,
Right.
but there is plenty of opportunity and excitement. And in fact, in most indigenous cultures, it's the elders who teach the younger people
Mm.
about life and experience, because they have the most life and experience.
Yeah.
So I think it is something really missing in our culture, that benefit of the wisdom of elders.
Yeah.
So I've been really fortunate since moving here to find some people who I really admire and appreciate.
Yeah. I love that. I really do, because I agree. I mean, I think that so much about the messaging that we see, whether it be in, media, social media out there in the world, is very kind of youth focused. And for those of us who are in this midlife, middle age stage of life,
Or
season
born in
of
the
life.
Middle
Yeah.
Ages.
Or
Yes.
right on the upper middle age, maybe we would say. It's, again, I didn't think I would be doing this I started at, 49.
Right.
You know, it's just you don't get that kind of messaging, like it's okay to try something new. I think before we were talking too, I said around here we have a awards thing where there's a award called for 40 under 40, and again, that's awesome to recognize some young leaders and people who are under the age of 40 accomplishing some really neat things, some cool things in their
Mm.
field or in their communities. I think that's great. But give me, the 50 over 50,
Yeah.
50 over 60. Give me a list of people who in their 50s, 60s, 70s and beyond have started a new business, started a new pursuit in the arts, completed a degree, got their
Yeah.
PhD at 70, 75, because there are people doing it. It's happening. And
100%.
I don't think we see or hear those stories as a culture, like you know, they're out there. We just don't get that information maybe as much as kind of on the younger side of things. So again, nothing if you're 40 under 40 and nothing against that. I don't want anybody
Yeah.
to think I'm anti that at all, but yeah, give me the 50 over 50, you know,
Yeah, no,
give
and I
me
think that, those younger people do need to be appreciated and applauded because they need help. They
you
need
bet.
help moving up and support in their fledgling businesses and so forth. But
Mhm.
it's true that, older people have an experience and a way of seeing the world that is totally different. In Japan, they say that as you grow older, you grow closer to your roots. And
Mm,
I remember that the first thing I wanted to be was an artist. That when I was little, when I was tiny, and that got
yes.
adulterated over time. Okay, I found careers that were linked to the arts, but they were not strictly being an artist. And I really only got to that in my 60s. So, or
I love
late
it.
50s. Yeah.
I love it. I think that is so, so great. And again, I think there's going to be people out there listening that are going to hear your story and be inspired,
I hope
that
so.
throughout your life that you have pursued these things uh later in life. You've lived all over the world and, again, started some of these things, 40, and post 40, which is just awesome. So I love
And
that. Thank
you
you so
starting
much.
this podcast,
Well,
Nicole,
yeah.
like I'm so proud of you for
Oh,
doing
thank
this.
you.
This is clearly something that, is really in you. You had a drive to do it and you can see the excitement in your eyes creating it and it comes through listening to them. It's so wonderful to hear you kind of realizing yourself. And I think that's what this age should really be about.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I couldn't agree more. It's absolutely true. And my hope is that through the podcast, we can build a community of people who feel, uh, I don't know if inspired is the right word, but just affirmed that they can do anything they want to do. And it doesn't
I
matter
think
what
I think inspired is the right word.
what the year is on your driver's license or your birth certificate or whatever. You can do anything you want at any age. So I
Yeah.
love it. Well, there's a couple questions I like to ask every guest on the podcast.
Okay,
And
shoot.
one is if you had to pick something that you feel like is the best thing about being at this stage of life, what might you share?
Um, Best thing about being is I think it's that. I think it's realizing your dreams,
Mhm.
that like you starting a podcast, that
Mhm.
the stuff gets in the way before that. And in a way, when you get to this age, time's a wasting. It's like, you
Right.
know what? If there's something you really have always wanted to do, now's the time,
You bet.
and it's realizing that. Yeah. And I think
Absolutely.
I like the idea. I've heard this message in South Africa that when you stop bleeding, it's because your energy is for yourself. You're retaining that energy to support yourself and your own dreams.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. That is great. I love that. Yeah, absolutely. So if you had to go back to Brooke
Oh,
in
Lord.
her 20s or 30s in that, few years ago, what would you tell yourself about this stage? I think there are people who I remember in my 20s, I was like, oh, 40. Oh, that's ancient. It's a long ways off for me, and then here I am, I'm almost 50. What would you tell yourself in your 20s and 30s about being this age in this stage?
I mean, I think it would be to find out, to seek out people who are in this stage. In fact, when I was in my 20s, I had one of my best friends was the editor of Harper's, Willie Landels, he was probably in his 60s then, and he was tremendously inspiring to me. He was just all the things I wanted to be, creative and intelligent and wise and kind and funny. And he was just wonderful. And he was a wonderful mentor and just a great friend. And I
Mm,
think of him every day. So I think that's what I would have said. Find people like that. Find people who are wise and who will impart their knowledge and
mhm.
share with you because it's not really about the fact that it's not over till it's over. It's more those people are a wealth of knowledge and I keep saying the same words, but all the good stuff.
Right.
They have their
All that
priorities
just
sorted
life
out.
experience,
Yeah.
and kind of, like I talk to my son all the time because I can reflect back to what it was like to be a teenager. And I'll say, someday, this feels really important right now. And I'm acknowledging that and I'm not dismissing you. But trust me, in a few years, this is not going to have mattered, and I
Yeah.
think it would, to have someone that's a stage or two ahead of you, like you were saying, to say, you know what, here's some truths. I'm going to share with you some truths about life and things I've seen and knowledge I have or wisdom I have, and to just give us that reassurance, that things are going to work out, or here's some things. Maybe it's a professional, a mentor that they can give you, impart that wisdom to you that will help you uh,
Mm.
professionally or personally, if it's a personal mentor, and obviously he had that's a tremendous impact, right, that this person had on you, that you're still talking about them today, and
Yeah.
that's just powerful, that's
I
really
have a
powerful.
friend who did something recently that he set up. I thought this was a great idea. He set up a board of directors of his life. So he
Oh,
had mentors for all the different aspects of his life, one who was financial, one who was spiritual and emotional, and so forth. And he would have board of director meetings where he would report to us about his progress in the various areas of his life and set
oh,
goals. Beautiful idea. Such a
I
beautiful
love
idea.
that. And it
Yeah.
just creates this support system for yourself. It creates this group of people who are invested in you, and that you also some accountability, right?
Yeah,
In terms
exactly.
of some things, if you've got some plans or goals, some people to maybe hold your feet to the fire a little bit, which there's nothing wrong with that. And just that support system, kind of a built-in support that you can have to help you throughout your life. That's awesome. I love that. You should all do that.
Yeah, community. It's really
Yes.
creating a community because we live very disjointed societies now and we don't really
Mhm.
have community support like our group, which has been a tremendous
Right.
community support.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was actually just going to say that. I was like, you know what? That community aspect of whatever the topic is, whether it's parenting or some professional type situation, it's so important. It's yeah, I can't imagine not having that in my life, and all of you in our mothers group. I mean, it's just been a life-changing experience for me. So it's huge. I love that.
Yeah.
That board of directors of your life.
Great. Yeah. I watched this amazing movie long time ago, but it made a huge impression on me. I think it's called I Am. And it was about the guy who was the director of Ace Ventura Pet Detective, and he had a life-changing accident, cycling accident,
Oh.
and he was in constant pain for 4 years, and he was going to kill himself. And then he felt called to make this movie, and he made this movie about why are we here? What is the point of us being here?
Mm,
And he interviewed all of the greatest thinkers of our time. And the message he came down to was connectivity. We're here for each
mm,
other.
yeah, it is. Being connected, having connection, having
Yeah,
community. It's powerful. Absolutely powerful. I love
totally.
that. Well, Brooke, thank you so much for sharing today. I
Thank you.
know that those listening are going to be inspired by your story. And I'm so glad you were on to share. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Nicole. And thanks for doing this podcast.
Of course. So happy to do it. If you're enjoying the podcast, please follow the show to make sure the latest episode is on your podcast feed each week. I would greatly appreciate a rating and a 5-star review on the podcast platform you're listening on. It helps others to find the show. If there are topics you'd like me to discuss on the show, please email me at themarvelousmiddleagepodcast@gmail.com or direct message me on Instagram at Nicole Stute. Thank you for listening.